You have the anti-white terrorists showing up to assault ICE facilities. And Texas was recently required to count when illegal aliens, so intruders in my vernacular, intruders were getting health care at the hospital. Now, I've been in many arguments over the years with anti-whites, especially anti-whites, a lot in America, but especially anti-whites in Canada, European white anti-whites, white anti-whites in Canada, white anti-whites in Europe, who have been convinced by the anti-white narrative that non-white people, all of them practically, citizens and non-citizens, go without any form of health care. That only the white race has health care in the United States, that it is beyond the cost of non-white people in general. Really, I'm not exaggerating. And that certainly the people who don't have citizenship, the people who broke into our country, get no medical care whatsoever. They get no medical treatment, and they are forced to suffer and even die from minor things that could be very easily treated. This is really what they think. I had an argument with a good-looking woman from Norway, and that was the end of any more talking to that good-looking woman, because she was intransigent. She averred that people who didn't have citizenship, and that her remedy was that they should all be given citizenship. Every non-white coming in the West should just be given citizenship until there aren't any non-white people who are hungry or cold or have a cold or anywhere on planet Earth. That's how so many white anti-white women think of both sexes. That's really their thought process. Just let them keep coming in. They can't conceive that there could ever be a limit, that things could ever run out, that even all the abundance that we in Western civilization create because of our biosphere, because of our instinct, that could be depleted, that could be derailed, that ability to create upon create upon create could all be knocked down like Jenga style, so that we're back to living like animals. They just can't conceive it. They shouldn't be allowed to make a decision on it, should they? Since they can't conceive it. So that's what this bitch was saying. Oh, they should all be given citizenship in your country so they could get health care. And I said, absolutely no. This is our country. America is the white race. Number two, they do get health care. None of them are not going without health care. They go into every emergency room you go in the United States, practically. I mean, you might be able to find maybe this town in Arkansas. I don't know how big their emergency room is, probably the size of a closet. But you go anywhere, every single emergency room I've ever been in, full of non-white people every time. It doesn't matter when you go. And it doesn't matter what their percentage is. Like here, you go all the way back in time to when I was a child. And of course, having to go often when I was a child, needing stitches, needing a cast, and back then, the non-white population in Northern Virginia, much lower. Emergency room full of non-whites. Today, non-white population in Northern Virginia, much, much higher. Emergency room full of non-whites. I have no idea why that is. Full of non-whites. I know this, they're getting treated. I know this, they're not being turned away. So the anti-whites love to play this little game where they take away the keeping of the data that reveals what? Reveals what? What? The harm being done to the white race. That's what it reveals. They like to hide the data that shows the harm being inflicted on the white race. And so, in Texas, there apparently were no records being kept of how often people who are non-citizens broke into our homes, go to the hospital to get free health care. But then something happened, and they had to start counting. 100,000 plus. identified as illegal migrants in Texas in hospital visits. This has to change, writes Eric Doherty. Mass deport. More than 100,000 undocumented patients sought care after Texas hospitals were required to ask immigration status. More than 100,000 intruders sought medical care in Texas in the first 4 months that hospitals were required to ask every patient their immigration status. But that represents a small, 100,000 sought medical care in Texas in 4 months. How much do you want to gamble with me that over these first 4 months, and I'm sure going forward, the human beings that are required to ask for the immigration status, these human beings who are programmed with what? Anti-whiteism, are going to be finding ways and have found ways to not record, so therefore to under-record how many are actually non-citizens getting free health care. I will gamble everything I own. That's how certain I am. So this number, what's the actual number? In August of 24, Abbott signed an executive order directing hospitals to start collecting data regarding patients who are not lawfully present in the U.S., including a number of patients that cost of care provided to those patients. So, you know what should happen? You show up at the hospital and you're a non-citizen, and as they treat you, which is the humane thing to do, unless you're showing up like we've heard so many reports where like our little son Manuel here has a cold. Okay, oh well, live with it. But they show up while they get treatment that, by the way, we have to pay for. And that's what that Norwegian bitch, anti-white bitch, didn't understand. Or didn't care. Like, it's just infinite wealth. My poor ass having to pay insurance, and deductible, etc., having to pay for that going up because the hospitals have to charge more, and my taxes going up because the hospital passes what they can onto the taxpayer. So my bill goes up in my insurance plan, and it goes up in my taxes so that these people can have free health care. And she was like, how much is it really going to go up? I'm almost on the street, bitch. And that doesn't even matter. You pay for it. If you want to pay for free health care for people who have non-white skin tones or people just non-white, period, if you want to pay for them, then you pay for them. We'll set up a special fleece your white ass fund. And every paycheck, there'll be a little category for the non-whites. And then you can feel good about it. Instead of villainy signaling with my paycheck. And then you have all of the other ramifications that nobody ever gets into. The broken societal contract that I should be fleeced by the government, that I have a contract that to obey its laws, I should be fleeced by that government for the betterment and enrichment of another group of people. Why would I continue to obey such a government? These dumb females of both sexes, they need to be ball gagged. Many of them will enjoy that. I understand, but that's what they need. Texas Health and Human Services previously released the first set of data showing more than 30,000 sought medical care in just November. An updated data release Wednesday shows that figure grew in 581,000 by the end of February. about 2.3% of all patients, more than 4 million patients of the total, or is the total. Hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients their immigration status, but patients are not required to answer. So are you getting... So the anti-whites have... Greg Abbott did nothing. Wheel his ass out to the ocean. He did nothing with his executive order. They're required to ask, but they're not required to answer to get the treatment. So not only do you have anti-whites in these roles, and how many times have you been to a hospital and these front-facing people, you can look at them like you can a Starbucks barista and know in 2 seconds, you are looking at an anti-white sumbitch right there. How many of them are not even going to be asking? Not even going to bother to ask. Or they're going to find another little clever way to do the paperwork so that it won't be carried out. And then on top of that, the patients are not even required to answer. And you still got over 100,000. How many is the true number now? Well, my opinion is they should have to ask under a penalty of execution. And they should have to answer or no treatment. They should have to prove that they are a citizen, or if they can't, affirm that they are a non-citizen. And then while being treated, ICE pulls up. There's your cast. Here are the officers. Have a nice day. We're never paying for you again. Don't want to go back to the country you came from because you are a worshiper of Pastor Sparkles? No worries. We're going to send you to Rwanda. They said they won't. They really are interested in eating Mexican. The cost of a care provided between November and February to patients reported to undocumented totaled. So this tiny number of the actual number of 100,000 plus cost $500 million almost in 3 months. $500 million in 3 months. You got this country. We looked at over the course of the year, and it was in the billions, almost as much, almost this close to our defense budget. And we're forced to pay for policing the world. And that's how much we're having to pay for all of the social services, and including healthcare for these people. No, contract is broken between the white race and the government of this country. The white race is America. Time to instantiate a new government, maybe. And if the government is not going to serve the well-being of white people, if it's not going to abide by our contract, that we will obey its laws and it will have our fealty and it will serve us, it will use the rights that we have granted to it, that we got from God or our creator, nature, whatever it is, and it will use those granted to the government to protect us, to ensure our well-being, etc. If it's not doing that, then we got a problem. We've got to have a conversation. And when a percentage of the white race becomes a people, this phenomenon is over with. When we can do, like Musk is getting ready to do to the Republican Party, when we can get in there, because a percentage of the white race, 0.5% in America, identify as a people and seek thereby well-being, individual well-being by way of group well-being, we'll be able to control the outcomes of elections here and there and here and there. And that's enough in the slim majority. That's enough. So here we are, the absolute fleecing, taking me right back to this conversation with this good-looking Norwegian white female. Man. So it's just going into some of the more details where some of the most egregious. And over the years, we've seen I remember when I was working on the Hill, the cucks at the time, they loved to talk about all of the hospitals going out of business because not enough of their clientele were tax-paying, insurance-holding American citizens. And so they were just folding. And they love to write up big articles, very erudite articles about this very sophisticated stuff, because that's going to change everything. All you ever needed to do was this. This is all we ever needed to do.